guys, this is Mark Saint, and this is another episode of Brazil Unsubtitled podcast, more specifically episode number 7. So, it's a beautiful sunny Friday here in Brazil. It's 1:05 p.m. right now, and the topic of this podcast is something I've been thinking of for a while. And I was pondering if I should do that because it's a polemic subject. It's something that saddens me personally. But I think it's important to bring this topic up to discussion once it's a recurring situation. So, okay, I'm going to cut to the chase and say that I'm going to be talking. I think you guys have seen the thumbnail of the video if you have somehow found this video on YouTube. But I'm going to talk to you guys about the Argentinian President's phrase about South Americans or Latin Americans. I don't like the term, I have a video about this, but because it doesn't make sense, but let's say Latin Americans because that's what everybody says, right? So what is the sentence exactly? And I quote, let me get it for you so you understand what I'm saying. Okay. Mexicans have come from the Indians, the Brazilians have come or have gotten out of the jungle, but us Argentinians have arrived in the continent on ships. If this is not racist, I don't know what it is. Racism, right? Before I recorded this video, because I think he said this some time ago, I think 2 weeks ago maybe. Yeah, so I kind of ponder a lot about whether or not I should be talking about it, because I hate every generalization. So saying that all Argentinians are racists, all Brazilians are racists, it's stupid. We're taking a nation full of good people and we are blaming them for someone else's mistakes. That's horrible. And also, I wanted to make a self-analysis before I made this podcast, which is, are we Brazilians racists as well? Do we mistreat the minorities as well? So this is very important to question before I decide to expose someone else. Okay? And I want to say that I am not in the best moment to make this podcast. I think we Brazilians are not, because we are represented by a president who is no different from Alberto Fernandes, the president of Argentina. Unfortunately, President Jair Bolsonaro is something himself, not to say any other thing. He says what comes to his mind, he speaks his mind, he offends people of all kinds and all genders and all sexual orientations and all nationalities. He is a crazy guy to the extent of saying the Japanese people had very tiny male reproductive parts. So I think it entitles the Japanese to come and make a podcast about my president and maybe think that all Brazilians are racists, are stupid like he was, like he is. But I just want to say that I got this phrase from Alberto Fernandes and I felt really disappointed. Offended, but not offended because the name Brazilians was there. Because if he had said this about any other people, I think it would generate the same repulse that I feel right now. And I want to say to you that there is nothing more stupid than this kind of generalizations. I have a major in international relations, and one of the theories I studied at the university talked about the construction of identity, right? And it said that people have differences with other people because of the fact that they don't identify themselves with this particular people. And as long as this identification is not happening, conflicts will generate, misunderstandings will happen. So what does that mean? it's easier for people to build a wall and separate one territory from another, as what happens like in the Middle East with Israel and the Palestine, or the United States and Mexico, for example. So it's easier for you to build a wall, and like you're sweeping the dust to under the rug. So as long as you don't see the problem, it doesn't exist. You know, it's someone else's problem. When in the end of the day, it's everyone else's problem, right? So what is the problem of having a mix of people in your country? What is a problem? What is the problem of having African Americans, of having Asians, of having Spaniards, like Hispanic descendants, European descendants? So when you say something like that, when you say we have come from ships, you are saying that Europeans are better than everyone else on this planet. And then you forget a very important detail. There hasn't been a continent that has been more bellic than Europe, that has caused more problems to the world than Europe. And I love Europe. I'm not being xenophobic or racist here. I'm saying they have been responsible for tremendous conflict in their territory. And two of those conflicts have expanded and broken borders and become something huge. So there is no perfection in Europe. They have probably mapped the world. They have constructed the societies that we know. The United States of America is a result of European studies. Adam Smith, the British guy, has created better, the capitalism as we know, with his invisible hand. Right? Montesquieu has created the idea of checks and balances for the construction of a democracy. The democracy has come from the Greek. Montesquieu has created checks and balances for the construction of a republic, the three powers. How they balance themselves in order to avoid tyranny. Of course, I'm very proud of being Portuguese descendant. My country is full of immigration. That doesn't mean the African are inferior. There is racism. I don't want to be a hypocrite about my country because there are stupid people everywhere. But the problem is when this kind of phrases come from the president of the country, just like my president is doing too. And I completely reject his ideas. So, guys, I want to share with you my frustration because we are on the 21st century. Nevertheless, we are still prone to problems. We are still fragile to problems that should be over by now. That is sad. That is very sad. I remember this guy, and I don't remember his name, but I remember him. The guy who went around in New Zealand shooting everybody around. I think it was New Zealand, not Australia. And it was amazing because he said the society needs to be unique, not mixed like Brazilians are. And Brazilians is a proof of how flawed the miscegenation is. That's horrible. That's horrible. We are all human beings. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, your orientation, or the kind of eyes that you have, or the color of your hair. And I'm not preaching here that everybody should learn everything about everybody. For example, I don't know many things about Bolivia. I don't know many things about Uruguay. But I'm keen to learn. And that doesn't entitle me to criticize anybody I don't know. If you want to open your mouth and say something about someone, study first and do this elegantly. But bring the solution for the problem, not the criticism per se. This president is not only dumb as, I cannot say the word here, but he's also very ignorant when it comes to history, because Brazilians, the Brazilian country, Brazil was colonized by the Portuguese, or explored at least for a while. And where did the Portuguese come from? I ask you a question. So this is the kind of behavior that saddens me. I really like Argentina. I like the Argentinian people, because again, we need to share love. Just like Jesus Christ said, love each other as I have loved you. So I just want to say that I don't want to generalize. I don't want to say all Argentinians are like this, but there's a big part of the Argentinians who are like this. And this is really sad. I remember Maradona calling Pelé a slave. Not to mention, guys, okay, it's soccer. They have some strange behavior in soccer. I'm not going to talk about it. I've already mentioned this in another podcast. But when you have an opportunity and you let it flourish, you just to speak what you have in your heart, in your mind. So Brazilians are all slaves, right? And we are very proud we have abolished slavery in this country. It doesn't matter the reason. If it was not altruistic, whatever it was, but we did. And we have a lot of African Brazilians living among us. And this country is as theirs as any other people's. The Japanese who come here are absorbed. My daughter studies with a lot of Japanese kids, Japanese descendants. My neighborhood is mostly inhabited by the Japanese descendants. So that's horrible. Don't say something you don't know. Don't bring separation, but bring construction. So I have seen a lot of repercussion, a lot of people were really angry at what the president said, and many people defended Brazil, right? You have to defend the Mexicans as well, because you're generalizing. And what is the problem of being an Indian descendant? What is the problem with that? And there is another thing Mr. Argentinian President forgets. If it weren't for Brazil, and guys, okay, I understand this rivalry is historical, is in sports, but I thought this was done, to be honest with you. In my 40 years of life, I have seen a bunch of things that disappointed me, right? But I always separated from the majority of the Argentinians, and I said it's sports, it's this, it's political competition, so it's pretty understanding. But unfortunately, no, it happens a lot, right? This guy forgets that in 1945, when the United Nations was being discussed and created in San Francisco, California, if it weren't for the Brazilians, his country wouldn't be part of it, because the United States was clearly against Argentina joining the United Nations, especially because they somehow positioned themselves for the Nazi Germany, right? They said, no, we're neutral, but The Americans knew they had a big sympathy for the Axis, right? So if it weren't for Brazil to beg, Argentina would never be part of the United Nations. So I'm not saying, guys, we need to know everything about every country. There are a lot of countries I don't know anything about. But that doesn't entitle me to go and say things that I don't know. So if I don't have anything good to say about this country, I shut up. Right? So, especially if I am in a position of a leader like his. You are a freaking president. Watch your mouth. Because you give us the impression that's what people say. So exactly the same people think exactly the same thing people are thinking about Brazilians at the moment because of our president. So that's horrible. It's a topic I didn't want to bring, but I need to speak my mind. I need to say what I'm thinking about it. Right? That's pure ignorance. And you need to go back to the history classes and learn a little bit more about my country. I understand this rivalry maybe happens because of historical conditions. Like we were in opposite sides in many conflicts in the continent. I understand that. We were also together in some others. But come on, it's 21st century. Let's open our heads, open our minds. We have internet. Internet is not only for Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Internet is also for accessing the biggest libraries in the whole world. That's it, guys. That's what I wanted to say. Again, I want to make it very clear, I have no beef with the Argentinians. It's a pleasure for me to be their neighbors. I'd like to visit the country one day. And whenever I see Argentinians here, I'm happy. Because they all come here and they come in numbers. I've already said that many times. Especially in the south. No problem for us. But come on. Slaves. Really? Jungle. If you don't know anything about us, shut up. Thank you very much for watching. If you are on YouTube, for listening to this podcast. And I hope to see you soon. Remember, we have videos posted on Mondays and Thursdays at 7 and a podcast at 7. Guys, have a great weekend and see you next time.